So my very first real estate investment was a new construction ground up development that we own to this day. It's an 800 square foot A-frame. And one turned into two really quickly, two turned into four, brought on some investor capital. And today we're developing $10 million worth of cabins and hoping to triple that next year.
Hi, this is Garrett Sutton, and you're listening to the Average Joe Finances Podcast.
Welcome to the Average Joe Finances Podcast. Are you trying to get out of debt, invest, or just not sure where to start? Then this is the place for you. We discuss different ways to get out of the rat race and build your wealth. Join us on this wild ride to financial freedom.
Hey, welcome back to the Average Joe Finances Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Cavaggioni, and today's guest is Alex Jarbo. So, Alex, super excited. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I want to start things off the same way I start every podcast episode, and we want to know more about you. So if you could share a little bit about yourself, tell your story. Who is Alex Jarbo?
Yeah, man. So I'm the CEO and founder of Sargon Investments, which is a short-term rental development and management firm. And where I got started at, if we want to go all the way back, was served 4.5 years in the Marine Corps. And I was sort of coming on the end of my enlistment. And I just had decided that I didn't want to re-enlist. I was stationed in DC at the time. And I just started diving. Last year of my enlistment, I started diving into a lot of different, like just looking at different asset classes, whether it be stocks, crypto, real estate, and M&A, just or overall business stuff. And real estate had really caught my eye. And just because I liked the complete control you had over it. So I dove really deep into that, learned flipping, multifamily, any self-storage book that was out there at the time, mobile home park books. And I originally landed on flipping, and I had joined a flipping mentorship while I was still a part of the Marine Corps. And what I realized was the gentleman that ran that flipping mentorship, all of his long-term wealth was tied into short-term rentals. And so I got him on a call and I was like, this is awesome. I love the unique aspect of it. I come from a hosting family. So I was like, I love the hosting piece to it as well. And he had showed me his like cash flows and his numbers, and they were just insane compared to like long-term rentals. And so at that point, I had decided, okay, I want to get into short-term rentals. And he had helped me decide on a market. And then once we decided on that market, the day I got out of the Marine Corps is when I drove here. And I had some money saved up and I had a place set aside because I had visited prior to that. But the day I got out of the military, moved here, got my broker's license, my real estate license. And then I started looking for a short-term rental for myself. And what I realized really quickly at that time was everything was either, even back in 2015 and 16, everything was either way out of my price range, or it was in my price range, or it just wouldn't have done well as a short-term rental. It maybe would have done well if I would have put like a long-term tenant in there, but not a short-term rental. So my very first real estate investment was a new construction ground up development that we own to this day. It's an 800 square foot A-frame. And one turned into two really quickly, two turned into four, brought on some investor capital. And today we're developing $10 million worth of cabins and hoping to triple that next year.
Man, that is fantastic. So you started off, so while you were still active duty in the Marine Corps, you're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go to this flipping mentorship. I want to learn about this. I see a lot of people doing things with these flips. And while you were there, you learned that the guy was doing short-term rentals. That's where most of his wealth was actually coming from. So that's fantastic. Was it more they were doing flips just to build capital to buy more short-term rentals?
That's what he was doing. And okay. I was like, let me just skip that piece and just go straight into the short-term rentals.
Nice. Yeah. So, the funny thing is, man, I don't know if this is just something that you got from your time in the Marine or this is just something that I find with so many people that are entrepreneurs and just go-getters. But you got out of the Marine Corps, right? You had some cash and you said, this is where I'm going. This is where my market's going to be. I'm moving there. We're going to make it happen. And you did. You got out, you went straight there and got yourself a place and said, all right, we're going to make it happen. But then you ran into some hiccups, right? You ran into, okay, some of this stuff's outside of my price range. What did you do to get around that?
Yeah, I realized that there was nothing on the market that was in my price range. And at that time, it still is cheaper to build than buy because there's still an inventory shortage. But I mean, I was like, okay, what is the smallest property I can build that is still livable, but at the same time still feels spacious? And that was the floor plan we had decided on. It was like If people hop on my website, they can like just go straight to the Airbnb link, but it's like an open floor plan, full kitchen, full bathroom, 2 bedroom, or it's 1 bedroom with a loft, but that can sleep 6 people, but it's a very spacious. So that's how we got around that, was just optimizing the floor plan on that first one, because there's no wasted there's not 1 square foot that's wasted in that property. And even 10 square foot will set you back like grand or whatever that number is. So it's like just optimizing the square footage was very important compared to just purchasing an already built property.
Okay, so you right off the bat got right into development then. It wasn't even...
It took about 6 months of me like bidding on properties, losing out, and blah, blah, blah. So about 6 months of frustration. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. So what were you doing in the meantime while you were figuring out how to get this capital to buy real estate or do these developments? Like, what were you doing for cash flow during that time frame?
I love that question. And it's funny because like that question's only going to come from a previous military person as well. So I had half of my bachelor's completed when I was in the Marine Corps, a little over half. So I went to school online finished up my bachelor's relatively quickly, moved into a master's, and I'm finishing up a doctorate right now. So school kept me busy while I was going through all that. And then obviously like the military will pay for your housing while you're doing that. But then I was also a licensed broker. Like most of my money came from doing deals as well.
Okay, great. So you were getting that basic allowance for housing that you get when you're using your post 9/11 GI Bill. So that's fantastic. Yeah. And then, of course, you had mentioned that when you first moved there, you got your broker's license and you were doing that. So that's great. The good thing about that, too, is most people, when they get their real estate license at first, it's a struggle. I know that from when I got mine, right? It's a struggle. Man. You're trying to figure it out and you don't have a job and you don't have an income. So to see that you stuck it out and to be able to do what you did and build what you've built so far and to see where you're going is just absolutely amazing, man. And that's why you're on my show, because
I appreciate that, man.
You're the kind of person I want to talk to. I just got out of the Navy. This is one of those things that kind of motivates me to get off my butt and keep doing what I'm doing, because I know it's going to be profitable in the future. It's going to work out, right? So you just got to keep going. You got to stay the course. That's awesome, man. Now, I understand that you were having trouble finding deals, right? At least in your price range. What made you come up with thinking that buying cabins or just like developing them would be more cost effective than just going out and finding a deal that's already made? I feel like there's so much more involved in the development side and plus that wait time too. So what made you decide to just go that route instead of maybe even trying to find off-market deals?
Yeah, so a couple things with that. So a lot of people ask me like, how were you so confident that was going to do well? And it's like, I wasn't. I just had backup plans put in place. I always like to think of the exit in mind. And with real estate investors, that's pretty easy to understand. But when you're putting together like a business, it's a little difficult to think about your business ending one day. But you always need to be thinking, no matter what you're in, you need to be thinking the exit in mind outside of marriage, I would say. And so I had underwritten that property as a long-term rental initially. And then the second exit was just selling that property. All of our properties are permanent foundation stick-built houses. So like anybody can get a loan on our properties if we ever sold them individually. So those were the two exits I had in mind. I was like, okay, if this doesn't work out as a short-term rental, I'm just going to either rent it out midterm or to a long-term tenant, or I'm just going to sell it off. Where it came to comparing the numbers, to answer your original question, I had a GC friend of mine that I just asked him what the price per square foot was and site costs and everything, like generally. And I had an idea that it would rent better, or it was just cheaper to build than it was to buy. And to put it in perspective, I always like to use that first one as a good example. We purchased the land, and there was a separate land deal that happened that we made some money on that too. But we purchased the land, turnkey, built the property. It was about 250 grand turnkey. I probably put about 30 grand of my own money, 35 grand of my own money with holding costs and furnishing and everything. That property last year grossed 83,000, 82,000, and then it netted after debt service 46,000. So it's like my ROI on that property, again, that's prior to COVID, but my ROI on that property has been over 100% annualized, which is crazy every year. And if you factor in COVID, costs of labor, costs of materials, you're still looking at like a 50 to 70% return on your money, which is crazy. So that, to answer your original question, that's what we looked at the numbers, and it was just, it looked like it was cheaper to build because we had complete control over it, even if we had to wait another 8 to 10 months for the property to be fully done.
Yeah. Wow. That's insane when you actually put the numbers out there. Now, this was back in 2015, right? 2015, 2016
2017 is by the time that first one was fully built. Yeah.
Okay, right on.
And then we started development on other ones while that was like almost completed as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so I'll get back to the reason why I asked the time frame, but I wanted to ask you something else too. Like after you developed that first one, or actually before you even developed it, how did you figure out where you wanted to build? What was what was the things you were looking at, some of the KPIs and things like that?
Yeah, so it's KPI. It's not really a number to put on it. It's more like there's two things that come with that. One is if you're just starting off brand new and you're like, I have no idea where to invest. I live in a busy metro market. Most of my properties are in a more rural setting, about 15 to 25 minutes away from downtown. So that's number one. Is I like to go a little bit further out than the city. Land prices are cheaper. People are now used to driving compared to just Ubering everywhere. Like to these, like I invest in mountain markets, mountain and wooded markets. So people already understand they're driving to these areas. I like to say to people who are just starting that live in busy metro markets that want to get into this is no matter where you live, there is a community or a pocket or a city, or it might be multiple cities that people like to vacation in your city, that people like to take weekend extended vacations to, like extended weekends vacations to. That market might be anywhere between 1 to 3 hours away. I like to use the two extreme examples. You have New York City on one side of the country. People will drive to upstate New York all the time. And then on the other side of the country, you have San Diego. People drive to Big Bear Lake all the time. So those are the two extremes I like to use. And there's hundreds of those cities throughout the whole country that people can invest in that are close. So that's number one, is identifying that pocket market or that pocket city that you can build these properties in. And then the second thing is, and this goes for any property you're developing, is you want to be thinking about the entire guest experience. And what that means is not just the experience of the guest staying at your property, but also the drive to and from the property. So access is very important. And when I say access, you don't want your guest to be driving 30 minutes up a gravel road to get to your property. A lot of times the guest is going to be driving at night. A lot of times the guest new to the area and maybe their cell phone reception just cut out for some reason. You don't want your guests to be annoyed and scared by the time they even get to your property. So outside of market selection and property selection, when you're looking for land, access is probably the most important thing to think about. We like to be off of some sort of paved road, even if we have to put our own driveway in.
Yeah, that's fair. And a big key point to take away there too, access. It might not be something you think about, especially if you're building or developing in like rural areas, like you said. Very common to see like dirt and gravel roads. And if you have people that are traveling from the local city or or just even driving pretty far, right? And they're used to paved roads, or they're driving their nice car and they don't want to get the rocks chipping it up. So that's huge. It's funny that you mentioned those two extremes, right? Because I know people that live in San Diego that invest in Big Bear Lake. I know people that live in New York and invest in upstate New York because that's just where people go, right? That's where people migrate to.
Yeah.
Especially like certain times of the year where it gets really specific. People traveling to upstate New York, not only, you have, of course, your busy summer months and everything too, but the fall, like you get a lot of stuff.
Fall's huge where I'm at. That's our busiest season here. Yeah, for sure.
Especially, in the mountains, right? You said you would invest in mountain and wooded areas. So that's huge. So knowing like when your busy times are going to be is also pretty important too, right? Because you're probably going to be getting more calls, more bookings, more questions being asked during that time frame. Actually, let's talk about that for a second too. How do you manage your actual time when it comes to putting this all together during your busy times, during your down times? What is something that you would do during, I guess, maybe off-peak season?
So let me say something into the seasonality piece. So usually I like to say we're building Instagrammable properties is what I say. It's properties where people would be proud to put on their social media. With that being said, our high season is summer and fall, like I just said, but we're building A-frames, we're building log cabins, we're building cottages, we're playing around with tree houses and stuff like that. These types of unique properties, there's some sort of seasonality. They're not as seasonal is what I'm trying to say. And the reason being is nothing gets, outside of, again, the summer and fall busy season, nothing gets more iconic than like a log cabin with a mountain view with a hot tub, right, in the winter. So the unique properties tend to be a little bit less seasonal. When it comes to the management piece, I like to keep a pretty lean crew, and there's 3 or 4 parts to the entire crew. Number one is automating most of your messaging, and you can use an automated messaging tool called Hospitable that syndicates about 60 to 70% of my own messaging. My pre-check-in message, my check-in message, my check-up message, my pre-checkout message and my checkout message. All of that's automated. 60 to 70% of that's automated. The other 20 to 30% that doesn't get automated is then pushed to a virtual assistant. And the virtual assistant, we source them from places that the virtual assistant has either worked with Marriott or Airbnb in the past. And we've not poached them, but like they have hospitality experience. So they handle 20 to 30% of the messaging. The third piece is going to be a third-party cleaning company that specifically works with short-term rentals. There's a big difference between a cleaning company that just takes care of people's houses and then short-term rentals. So the third-party cleaning company, handles our inventory. They handle everything. They take our linens offsite, clean them, bring them back, and they handle 100 properties in our market outside of our stuff. All of our calendars are synced, so I don't have to talk to anyone when it comes to that. And then I like to say that the cleaning company is also, you can avoid having a CO or a boots on the ground manager because they are going through your property at least 1 to 2 times a week. So they're going to be telling you if something is broken. They're going to be able to handle your lost and found if the guest decides to leave their wallet at the property, stuff like that. And then if the wallet is left or anything, they also know to talk to my virtual assistant, and my virtual assistant knows to talk to them. And then the last piece is going to be, or there's 2 more pieces, a dynamic pricing tool that adjusts pricing based off of the market every single night or every single day, that we use a tool called Price Labs. And the very last thing is when you get over 3 to 5 properties, I recommend getting like a part-time maintenance person or a maintenance person on retainer is what we do right now. And then we pay them hourly based off the work that they have to do. And then everything else gets covered by those 5 people. The 3 main pieces is the virtual assistant, the cleaning company, and the maintenance person for the boots on the ground stuff.
Yeah, that's huge. You have a very good system put in place, right? With you being hands off.
Yeah, like for the most part, I like to think about it like this. If you had to step away from your business right now, could it survive? Like right now, like if I just got up and left and had to go visit family in Michigan or whatever, could I be able to do that? And it's like the answer right now is yes. But like for a while, it wasn't. It's like I sought the right mentors. I put those systems in place, the right knowledge to be able to do that. No matter what business, that should be your goal, is to be able to step away from it if you need to.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. I find myself outsourcing more and more every day because it's super helpful. And it also shows growth when you're able to do that, right? And when you're more comfortable passing the reins off to someone else to allow them to also grow and develop. But I think the key thing here is the systems that you put in place that essentially automated all the functions, right? And what I think is really neat too is that your calendar syncs up with your cleaning company's calendar, right? So they know when you have somebody coming and going, when they have to get in there and change the linens and clean the place. And that's fantastic. Having the right systems in place is also important, not just any system, but the right system. So you named a couple good ones here. So for my listeners that are thinking about getting into short-term rentals, or if you're already into short-term rentals and looking to do something different, look at what Alex is doing, man. This is fantastic. Now, I wanted to ask you something about the virtual assistants, because I use VAs too. Absolutely love them. You'd said 20 to 30% of your messaging is coming through VAs, and you kind of did, but didn't poach them. So how are you finding, I don't do short-term rentals, so this is more for my listeners, but how are you finding VAs that are in the hospitality space that are available?
Yeah. The platform that I feel like everyone uses that we use is Upwork. Airbnb uses Upwork.
Okay, yeah. I use Upwork. That's how I found
it. Yeah, we just put a job posting out there. We like to confine it to the Philippines because that's where all their VAs are at. And then I'm not a huge fan of actually looking for VAs. Like the job posting thing's way easier. Have people to come to you based off of the stuff that you're putting out. And for people who don't know what I'm talking about, you can either look for VAs on the website on Upwork, or you could put your own job posting out there. It's like similar to Indeed, and they'll just filter themselves through. And it's not necessarily that they're like, it's cheaper labor. Like they know what they're doing. Like they have worked in the space. They understand the platforms. They understand what needs to get done if there's a guest issue. And the labor is way cheaper, but you're also paying them almost triple what they would make in their own country.
Attention, fellow real estate investors. I know you're tired of ineffective marketing strategies that leave your lead generation feeling like a bust. Well, I've got a great solution for you. I've teamed up with Ballpoint Marketing to bring you a fresh approach to growing your business. With their handwritten direct mail marketing, your business will stand out from the crowd. Their amazing writing machines will craft personalized messages for each of your potential clients, making a lasting impression and increasing the likelihood of them responding to your message. They even make pen smudge watermarks to add to the authenticity. And for those of you that are driving for dollars, one of their most popular offers are handwritten door hangers. Placed directly on the front door, these door hangers show a potential seller how serious you are. With Ballpoint Marketing, you can trust their marketing strategy will be both effective and unique, just like your real estate business. Use my coupon code ABGJOE for an exclusive discount. Don't miss out on this opportunity to grow your real estate business and generate leads. Click the link in my bio for more. Hey everyone, Mike with Average Joe Finances. The Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference, aka RubeCon, is on for 2023. It'll be May 4th through the 6th in Phoenix, Arizona at the Sheraton downtown. I'll be speaking again this year and I want to see you there. This year I'm doing 2 speaking events, one about growing your investor network through podcasting, and the other is about investing while in the military. We have some great speakers lined up, so you don't want to miss this conference. Visit averagejoefinances.com/RubeCon, REWBCON, or the link in the notes below and use promo code Mike for discounted tickets. See you there.
Let's get back to today's episode.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And just want to say that's exactly what I did when I hired my VA as well. Because the first one I hired, I went out and looked for. That was a mistake. The second one I hired, I put the job posting out there. And as a matter of fact, some of the people that actually helped me with this was another real estate investor that I know, and also another short-term rental guy. He was actually the one that told me, hey, just go put the job posting on Upwork, let them come to you and filter them out. And I said, okay. And that's what I did. I put the job posting out there, filtered it out to the top 5. I looked at those 5 even harder, took one more out, and then I interviewed 4 people and picked the ones. And that particular VA has been absolutely fantastic. As a matter of fact, I pulled her off of Upwork and I now pay her a monthly salary instead.
Yeah, I've done that.
Absolutely awesome.
Yeah, and
that's great advice.
For people who are looking to do the VA thing, I have nothing against taking them off the platform, because you can essentially pay them the same thing if you take them off the platform, except they'd be making 20% more.
Yeah, they're not losing.
So they'll be even happier to do that.
Yeah. Now, and Upwork was great though, because one of the things I liked about it too was like how it actually tracked hours and tracked time. It was very good about
once you get a
manage.
feel for, okay, this person knows what they're doing and they're not going to screw me over. That's where you can take them off the platform. Yep.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I did. I just want to second what Alex said. That's fantastic advice. So definitely check out Upwork. Okay. Awesome. Now, I want to get back to the whole thing that I was talking about with the dates and why that was important to me. Excuse me. So you did that first one back in 2017, and now a lot has changed since 2017. Yeah. We've had a pandemic since then. We've had all these shortages and supply chain issues and all this kind of craziness going on. Are you finding right now that short-term rentals are still profitable?
The unique ones are, for sure, man. Like we keep raising our prices on our unique ones, like on the ones that we mainly own, and they're still booked. We have a cabin that sleeps 14. Usually the luxury bigger cabins tend to have a little bit of lower occupancy, but a higher average daily rate. But like our ones that sleep anywhere between 4 to 6 people, those are booked out 90%, 95% plus on occupancy. What COVID did was it pushed people out of the cities into the more rural setting, and people got comfortable with that. If you look at the national forest and the national park numbers for the last 2 years since COVID happened, they experienced record numbers, because that's all people were allowed to do was just to be outside. So that people got more comfortable with traveling. And then the unique property piece, like we talked about, people are not getting more high maintenance, but they're expecting more from what they're staying, especially with now, like we're going through a correction, recession, whatever you want to call it. People are going to be not penny pinching, but they're going to be more specific on what they book. So if they can book this beautiful cabin or this beautiful A-frame compared to a hotel room or maybe a boring looking house, they're going to do that all day, because it's just, they're going to get more bang for their buck here.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And other people that I know that are also doing short-term rentals, at least the ones that I've seen that are doing super well, are very unique, like you said. And that whole thing that you mentioned earlier, like even in the wintertime, that an amazing mountain view and a hot tub would make anybody say, okay, that's somewhere I can go in the wintertime. So it's the little things like that just make it different than just a standard home, right, in the mountains. You have something that makes it a little bit different, something that makes people say, a weekend there would be nice. So yeah, that's huge. So that's great to know. My big thing is, I know like short-term rentals has been like the new hotness now for a while. And a lot of people started getting into it. And you're starting to see a lot more regulation. And that's like the biggest thing that I feel is maybe holding some people back is the regulation. Like I know where I live out here in Hawaii, it's almost
it's
impossible
intense. I know it's
to make
intense
it
in
to make
Hawaii
it happen
for
out
sure.
here, right? Specific areas, and then you have to have a license, and then they only let 30,000 people have a license, and they're all given away, right? So it's hard. So now you got to find a property that is in one of those zoned areas. There's a license with the property that could transfer over to you. So it's crazy. Like I've worked with a couple clients that are like, yeah, I want to buy a short-term rental in Hawaii, and when I explain to them, this is how you have to go about doing it, I don't hear from them again.
Yeah, for sure.
It's rough, but that's one of the things to pay attention to. So that's one of the things I want to point out for the listeners is just pay attention to what's going on in your specific area where you're thinking about investing, because change in regulations or a law can get passed and it can kind of mess things up. But the reason why I bring this up, because Alex, you had mentioned having multiple exits, right? You had mentioned that, okay, if this isn't going to work as a short-term rental, will it work if I rent it out monthly or midterm rentals and things like that? So that's just the things that I want to put out there to get people thinking that it doesn't necessarily have to be just a short-term rental. Make sure that it'll cash flow other ways as well, because you never know what can happen. All right, awesome. With everything else that happened, so actually, because you're on the development side too, I want to ask you this. How has the supply chain shortage and like lumber and everything else like that, how has that kind of affected your operations? I know you're in the middle of trying to build more cabins, right? So how has that affected you in your specific market?
Yeah. So when all that stuff started to happen, it didn't necessarily happen right off the bat with the lockdowns. It was delayed for probably the first 3 to 6 months. I'd say closer to 6 months when things really started to, and they go up quick and it takes a very long time for them to come down. We did hold off on building for a while because we had some budgets that were cut in the middle of all that. But all of our budgets now are done to today's numbers with contingencies built in as well. When it came to those, we've always, even to this day, like even with the new budgets that we're doing for all the other cabins that we're building, we like to go with like mid-tier finishes. And then if something goes wrong, that's where we can go down a level if we need to. The structure of the house really sells the property for the most part, and the colors and the design and everything. So we can, instead of tiling the bathrooms, maybe we do something different and stuff like that. Same thing with flooring options. Instead of going with engineered hardwood, we go with vinyl plank flooring and blah, blah, blah. So that's one way. And then when it came to supply chain issues, when we started picking back up again, I was a huge believer in terms of finish work or some of the smaller things that can, like, I remember specifically like a sink we had to reorder a sink like 3 times. That held us up. When you're looking at like Lowe's, Home Depot, Builders First Source, 84 Lumber, trying to purchase stuff that's only in stock has helped us a lot. It might not be exactly what you're looking for, but at least it's in stock compared to a number that a lot of times was like made up during COVID. Was like, oh no, it's in stock, but it's when delivery date comes, it's not in stock, or like maybe the delivery company lost it or something, which has happened multiple times to us. Building stuff that's in stock, people who are starting now are going to be dealing with today's prices, so don't let that scare you. The only thing you got to deal with now is interest rates. I mean, that's a whole different conversation. But when it comes, I'm a writer for Bigger Pockets for their short-term rental content. And so I write for their blog, and one of the first topics I wrote for them was when interest rates really started to go up in June of this year. And they're only going up, they're continuing to go up, and they're projected to go up even more. And what I say to people who are scared of that, outside of all the stuff we talked about, market regulations and blah, 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 is do not throw away real estate investing entirely during this process. We're seeing some phenomenal deals hit the market right now because of interest rates. So go through your underwriting, even if the interest rate's 7.5%, 8.5%. Yeah, it sucks that it's at that, but you don't know when it's going to go down. You don't know if they're going to continue to go up. So it's like, do not completely disregard real estate investing right now while we go through this correction. So there's phenomenal deals out there, right?
Yeah, that is a fantastic point, Alex, because one of the things that with being a licensed realtor out here as well is I talk to many clients who are scared about interest rates, especially military folks that are coming here for a 3-year period. And the biggest thing that I tell them is if you could find a property where the numbers work at the current interest rate, just think about what's going to happen when the interest rates go back
crazy.
And at the same time,
you're going to be more than set.
And if you're going to be here at least 3 years, you're going to be okay, because the market out here in Hawaii consistently, even before COVID, goes up 3 to 5% every year. It's insane. Even during a correction right now, we're not seeing home prices drop. Maybe small drops, but that's because the listing agent.
You're not getting 20 offers in the first 3 hours. That's not normal.
Yeah. Now we're back to 1 or 2 offers after an open house.
Yeah. Which was considered a seller's market in 2017, 15. Like, it's just like we got so used to the low interest rates for 2 years.
Yeah. The thing is, inventory is still low. right? So you still have the inventory problem. And that's why you're not seeing these prices drop like everybody was thinking that they were going to drop. Will there be a dramatic drop in prices or a crash? Maybe. I don't have a crystal ball, but at the same time,
if you build these properties the way we're talking about, like 400 square foot to maximum 1,500, 1,600 square foot, that square footage is always going to be desirable. If you're looking to sell that, like that's a starter home for someone. If they're built like an A-frame, a couple's going to move into that in a heartbeat outside of even renting it out as a short-term rental. Just like people are going to want to live in something like that. I mean, I consider that price range like affordable housing.
That goes back to having multiple exit strategies because you never know where things are going to go. Like I said, the market can correct even more. Who knows, right? But at the same time, just pay attention to the market that you're in. It's going to be very market specific. Like out here in Hawaii, I don't see the $1 million house price dropping down to 800,000. I just don't see it happening. Maybe it'll drop another 50,000, but then it's going to go right back up. If you look at history, right, you look at the 2008, 2009 timeframe.
Which is what I did.
Here, it dropped maybe 10%. And within that next year, it came back. Just pay attention to where you're at, the specific areas that you're at. Alex, I really love what you're doing, man. You put out so many like great golden nuggets here. So I think now I want to transition this into something that I call the final round. It's where I'm going to ask you the same 4 questions that I ask everybody that comes on the show. And I think I have a good idea of where your mind's at with this, but this is going to help us see how Alex is under pressure or when put in a tough situation. So if you're ready to go, we'll get this party started.
Let's go.
All right, let's do it. All right, Alex. So the first question I have for you, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made in real estate?
Yeah, so the biggest mistake goes back to the first one. There's a couple big mistakes, but I hadn't verified utilities like to the property. So we actually had built that first A-frame with a generator essentially because none of the neighbors wanted to give us an electricity easement. So making sure that and that almost cost us $200,000 because the property was built with no electricity and no access to solar as well. So that could have been the biggest mistake. And the second mistake that I've had before was pitching a deal to investors that I hadn't fully gotten under contract yet. I had verbal yeses, but it's really easy to jump the gun and get excited over a deal when people have verbally agreed to terms, but you don't have a contract. It was a little embarrassing that I wasted people's time on that. And then the other end was the first cabin, which not verifying utilities almost cost me $200,000.
Wow. Alex, I appreciate the transparency there. And I think that's a new one for that question. Most people say, I wish I would have started when I was younger type deal.
I started when I was 22.
Yeah, there you go, man. But I like how you didn't hesitate to tell us like some of the issues that you ran into. I can see the not getting an easement from your neighbors for electricity could be a huge problem. And then also the embarrassment with the not having the deal completely under contract yet. That's tough stuff, man. But it's things like that you learn from that make you better. And look at you now, man, just crushing it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no worries, man. So the next question that I have ties into this one. And it's what is something that you've learned that you wish you knew when you first started?
Yeah, and this goes back to the military and I'm mainly speaking to military people here, but I'm sure a lot of people can take some nuggets out of this. So I think I see it with a lot of my friends, but also just in general, people who leave the military. I think the biggest thing that we struggle with is we don't realize how big, we might realize it, but the military gives us a structure. We can lean very heavily on the military structure to get us through our days or whatever. And I think what guys or anyone who gets out of the military struggles with is that structure is then gone. And it's a little difficult to sometimes keep yourself accountable because in the past you leaned on the structure and the people that you were around. I wish I would have I have multiple mentors in my life at this point outside of the military. I wish I would have pursued a mentor in the first the first 3 years. I had nobody helping me. And I wish I would have paid it. Even if I put it on a credit card, I wish I would have paid into a mentor earlier on after me getting out of the military. And the mentor gave me that structure that I was used to.
That's fair. I think this could also be tied to anybody outside of the military as well. If you just graduated college, right? You had that whole structure of going to school and then now you're getting out into the real world. Or if you had a really good career field and you got out of that, right? So it's change, right? It's big changes that we have in life that you have to deal with. But yes, I can definitely relate to the military piece after being out for a little bit over 2 months now. It's been very different because I don't have anybody telling me what to do.
A lot of times that's the reason you get out, but then you're like, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, which is nice, right? But at the same time, it's kind of, if I don't do this on my own, it's not going to, right?
Absolutely.
So that's huge.
Like you need to sit down every night and be like, okay, what is my schedule today and for this week?
Yep. And that's literally on my calendar is make tomorrow's schedule or, look at your calendar for the next day. And then on Sunday, it's to review the entire next week and move stuff around if needed. Yeah, that's huge, man. Definitely appreciate that. All right, Alex, the third question of the final round is do you have any tips or tricks that you would recommend to someone that is just getting started today?
Yeah, and getting started in anything. One of the best books I've read on this topic is The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. That will give you the framework that you need if you can't like afford a mentor or something. But the tip I'd give everyone is literally no matter how busy your schedule is, you have an hour to spend, whether it be take it away from your sleep or something. Put 1 to 3 hours into something that you're really focused on and do that for the next like 2 to 3 years. And that sounds boring as hell, but that's the secret to success, is doing very boring things consistently.
That's fair. That's very fair. And that's a great book recommendation, which is actually going to be one of the next questions I ask you, but that's fine. Yeah. I think when you put it in that perspective, I feel like you just got to get out there and make it happen, right? Get out there and don't let nobody hold you back. The only person that can really hold you back is yourself. So definitely appreciate that, Alex. Okay. Now the final question, and you already mentioned a really good book. So now you're going to get a chance to tell us another one that you like.
Yeah.
But do you have a favorite business, investing, or real estate related book or podcast or both?
Yeah. So it's going to be just a general economy book. The Creature from Jekyll Island is the best book I've ever read. Some people might classify it as a conspiracy book, but it has 100 and something pages of references in the back. And every successful person that I've studied that is alive today, for some reason, if you go through their social media or something, or ask them that exact question you just asked me, that book kept coming. It was The Creature from Jekyll Island. So I think it's very important to understand how our money system works. And it was very interesting. I'd read that book prior to COVID, right when I got out of the military. And it was very interesting to see that play out with how COVID played out, like with how our money system was handled and stuff like that.
Yeah, that is bonkers. Okay, I just want to say that I've done a lot of interviews, right? And I've asked people this question a lot. The first time I heard this book recommended, I said, okay, cool. The second time I heard it recommended, I was like, oh, okay, that's more than one person recommending this book. Then the third time, which was actually recently, I said, this is the third time somebody has recommended this book. And now the fourth time, which is funny because so many people would mention other books. There's so many other books that I've had repeat offenders. This one has just been trickling in there. And now I feel like this being the fourth time it's been mentioned, it's becoming more of a solid recommendation.
Yeah. It's a thick boy, though, man.
Yeah,
Get ready. It's a 600-page book.
Yeah,
but
it's not an easy read, but it's like one of those must reads, right?
Yeah, it's like the goggles. Like you put the goggles on, and you're like, oh, like this is how our money system works. Or it's a really good predictor of what happens next. If our government starts printing trillions of dollars, inflation's going to go up. Federal Reserve has to tame that. So it's very easy to predict what's going to happen next after you read that book.
Yeah, so you have a better understanding of what just recently happened and what is currently happening.
And I was too young for 2008 and 2009 for me to be investing in real estate.
Yeah.
I dedicated like 3 months to reading just general economy books, and that was the number one book. It's just understanding how market cycles work.
No, that's great, man, because my first property that I bought was in 2007, so you can guess how that went, right?
Perfect timing.
Yeah, man, that's great stuff, Alex. Great recommendation. Definitely going to add that to the list. It's actually already on my list, but it's moving up now, so I appreciate that. Now, Alex, that is it for the final round. However, I have one more question for you, and it is the most important question of all, because people are listening to this interview and they're like, hey, Alex put out some fantastic information. The host did pretty good too, but we want to know more about Alex and where we can find more information about him. So, Alex, if you could share where people could find more information about you. Do you have a website, social media, anything like that?
Yeah, I have a free YouTube channel that I document most of the stuff that I'm working on through that, and trickles down. Sometimes I'll post 3 times a week. Sometimes I'll post 1 time a week. The YouTube channel is Alex Builds. It's a little logo of a blue treehouse, essentially. That's how people can find it. And then my personal website as well. I recently put together a course detailing everything that I've learned in the last 6 years. Essentially, I created the course that I wish I had when I started 6 years ago. If I would have had this course, probably would have saved $300,000 at this time and a whole bunch of headaches. But that's going to be on my personal site, alexjarbo.com. That's where all my interviews live. That's where that course lives as well. You guys can like click on the little thing, sign up for it. And then if you guys want to purchase it at the end, feel free.
All right, fantastic. And I know you're also a Bigger Pockets contributor.
Yeah, right, for the Bigger Pockets blog. If you guys hop on their if you hop on their free blog, like I'm the short-term rental guy, or at least one of the short-term rental people.
There you go. Hey, I'm going to make it easy for everybody. I'm going to have all those links in the show notes so you guys can copy and paste or click away. Just don't do it while you're driving. Alex, this has been a real treat, man, a real pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, to my listeners, thank you so much for joining me and our special guest, Alex Jarbo, on the Average Joe Finances podcast. Go leave us a 5-star review and tell us what you liked about today's episode with Alex. Aloha from Hawaii, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you for making it to the end of this episode. Greatly appreciate you being here with me today on the Average Joe Finances podcast. If you haven't done so yet, make this the episode that you go leave us a 5-star rating or subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Average Joe Finances podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Have an outstanding day.
Thanks for listening to the Average Joe Finances podcast, your source for beating debt, saving money, and investing. Learn more at averagejoefinances.com.